chess friends. Today we have an unforgettable game, which you couldn't remember all of it if you tried. This game over 100 moves, and you'll be stunned at how slow paced and little progress is made with each turn. But I found it to be very interesting, and we'll talk about it as we go here. This move right away indicates we're probably going to have a closed game. Depending on what white does. Notice you could play the move en passant here. Let's just show. And probably black would take with the f pawn in order to soon play the central move d5. Let's rewind. So white decides not to do that. Typical move here would be b5. Here, the so-called Benko gambit. Very good opening. But e5 indicates a closed game. What makes it a closed game, folks, when you hear that, usually is that the pawns are locked in. Knight c3, d6, e4. You see these 6 center pawns here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, locked in tight and needs a pawn break in order to open up the action so the pieces can move a little more. But let's move on because it's going to be a while. Here, bishop g5 and bishop to b1, avoiding the knight capturing. You don't want to allow captures, but of course the knight might be preferred in this type of closed game. I don't think either player knew what kind of game we were getting into just yet. By the way, white ended up becoming a grandmaster. I believe he was about 16 when this game was played in the World Youth Championships, 1969. Here it was, Stockholm, Sweden. Very interesting. This gentleman, Kenneth Rogoff, believe he is now gave up chess after making GM. And became an economist, went to Harvard, or is still at Harvard as a professor. So very interesting gentleman, and just another feather in the cap of the smart chess players. Knight g8, and at some moment you'd assume black would really need to play f5 to bust things open, but perhaps the player himself maybe was a little bit hesitant to do so, obviously. Rook a8, what a move. Not sure they even had ratings back then, but if they did, or maybe the tournament situation might dictate some of these decisions. So, okay, we haven't even talked much about the game. I would imagine the pawn breaks would be something like this. b4 is possible, or one day f5. But as is typical, you need to really prepare those breaks thoroughly. Notice black slipping and sliding here on the dark squares, trying to find inroads. Again, white elects not to trade. Engine giving b5 here, a pawn break. One thing I've noted over the years of teaching many players is that less experienced players are hesitant to change the pawn structure, or they don't know when to change the pawn structure. So really, the more you study pawn structures, the more you understand chess. But again, b5 guarded by 3 pieces. And white, you can see, is lining up with pawn, knight, bishop, queen for this coming pawn break. And black says, never mind. Queen e2, one of those positions where you can just wait and wait. I find it's useful to ask yourself, where do you want the pieces? For example, could black land a knight here in the center? Or could white land something b5, or it's hard. There's no open squares just yet. Here's a trade offered and still no. 40 moves have been played, folks, and there has not been one exchange of pieces. Every single piece is still on the board. And now you see who's maneuvering. Can white get some sort of break here and open up the king? When you have these maneuvering type games, you have more options for longer plans. You might have 4 moves to make a backwards and around to get a knight to a great square. Because of the closed nature of the game, time is not always of the essence, so to speak. But here comes a great move, the 50th move, still every piece on the board. Knight f5. Can you believe that move? Talk about allowing a capture with a bang. And black says no thanks. Let's take a look. If g captures this, a really nice concept here. He was planning to take with the g pawn, of course, opening these 2 beautiful rooks. They're staring at the knight. They'd be happy to take it and exchange the queen and knight for 2 rooks. White would be winning material. If that knight elects to move, this pawn also drops, more danger around the king, and white is winning. King h7, a wise decision, actually, not allowing those rooks to wake up. The rooks need open files, and really they don't have it because all 8 pawns are still on the board. Really nice concept. And both players, although the engine saying this or that, miss, really both players, you can feel their ideas trying to break on the king side, then shifting over to the queen side. Really just kind of a fascinating game, and one of those chess games you just can't plan for. And then you get an out of control game or this type of locked in, caged game. But yeah, white is able to hold at these weak points. Here, folks, again, fascinating. I'm not getting too deep in the analysis. It's just more enjoy the ride here. But you can definitely look a little more in depth. Again, these are high rated players at the World Junior Championships. Bishop d3, bishop g7, and the rooks don't have open files. The bishops don't have open diagonals. The engine favors white, probably because this pawn is so further advanced in the center than any other. But really, you can imagine a draw being a very, very reasonable result here. Surprised, or maybe there was some offers and one player declined. I don't know. But here we are on move, let's see it, 80. Bishop a4, move 80. And every single piece is still alive. Okay, we've finally doubled on the B file. Is there going to be an opening? No, king g3, defense. Incredible patience by both players is one thing we could say. I wonder what the time situation, this is well before the increments had become the standard. Will he open the B file? Try to guess which side of the board will open first, queen side or king side. Actually, that is the guessing game. Will white try to open up on the king side or on the queen side here? And here, B takes, finally a capture. That's the first capture and a question mark. How ironic. That is move number 94. The first capture of the game. Knight c1, and finally a piece is exchanged and it gets a miss. Every capture was a bad move. Here it gets an inaccuracy, and queen takes p8 inaccuracy again. Funny that all the captures were mistakes. Okay, but the major pieces come off, the rooks at least. And here, still white feels like has a tiny edge. Again, the pawn further advanced. At least there's some sort of pin here, but it's really never enough. Here, king g8, blunder. This pawn is hanging. I wonder what he was worried about, as he didn't take this h6 pawn. Engine giving knight f6 or knight c7. Not sure. That's an interesting one. Why he would allow that? There may have been some time pressure issues. Yeah, that pawn has just been hanging for a few moves. Very peculiar, actually. Queen a5, and here a draw agreed. I'm very curious, why not just capture? Maybe the position is too locked in still. Draw agreed here, move 106. Queen takes queen, and bishop takes. Maybe this is still just too little material, but why not play on after all that? Maybe they were down with their flag on the edge there, for those that remember. But a very interesting game. You may see these games and think there's not much to it, nothing even happened. But at any moment, the game is teetering on the edge. And if you don't play one of those defending the pawn break type moves, you might end up just with your king wide open. A pawn break such as h5 or f5 could have come at any moment and really opened up the game. Very interesting. I would say probably the most dramatic moment was exactly move 50, but not to be. A good move, but not to be. Black, very sturdy, and it makes one think, again, the old concept that maybe chess is just a draw. Black defended admirably, and although it was a tiny bit worse, was able to slow any threats down enough. So very interesting game. Fun one from chess history. I hope you all like that one. And we'll keep moving along with some interesting historical chess moments. Getting a lot more traction, like we've been saying. So love the subscriptions and the views. Really appreciate everyone out there. If there's anything else you want to learn or see, or players you specifically want more of, just drop some comments in there and I'll try to accommodate. Thank you very much.